Hi, it's me. My pretentious British accent and my inconsistent arse are back yet again. Yes, I crammed all the plans that I have into a background that hopefully makes it seem like I have a life, a very interesting life. I have enough books that I have never read. Ha! Fake candles? Yeah. Oh right, and if you're new here, hi, my name's Eureka and I do solved plot twisty true crime cases sprinkled with the occasional random video about mental health or basically anything. So yeah, stick around for that. It's great. You should try it. Let's just get into the story, right? So let's do our disclaimer first. And yeah, let's do our disclaimer first. This video is for storytelling and educational purposes only. In no way, shape or form do I mean any harm to the people I talk about, apart from the offenders sometimes, of course, and mopeds driving by. Also, this video contains graphic descriptions of violence and mental illness, and thus, viewer discretion is advised. And also, everything I talk about is from research that I've done on the interwebs. I'll link the resources down below, resources or sources, whatever they're called, so you can do your own research and form your own opinions. Alright, so let's get into today's story. We start our story today with a man named Dave Alexander Kroupa. Dave Kroupa was born on October 9th in 1987, and he lived in Sioux Falls, South Dakota with his parents, Trish and Tom. He also had two younger brothers named Adam and Max. His dad worked at a printing factory and his mother worked as a veteran service officer. The family was an honest and hard-working family, and they were very religious. They were Southern Baptists, which is usually very strict and conservative, and they went to church 3 times a week. However, this didn't mean that they didn't have a very warm and happy childhood. They grew up in a very loving household, and the bond between the parents and the 3 brothers was very strong. And also when Dave and his brothers got a little bit older, they really didn't take on the beliefs of their parents that much anymore, so they kind of went their own way, and from what I could find, the parents were okay with that. So that's good way to handle things, I suppose. Now, when Dave graduated high school, he moved to Denver to spend 2 years with the National Guard there. And after that, he earned a degree in automotive engineering, which is a very hard word because I've tried to say this like this is the 5th time. Automotive engineering. He got a degree in that. Eventually, he would move to Iowa and he would start working at a truck stop. And at this truck stop, he fell in love with his co-worker. And this woman was named Amy Flora. And they fell into a whirlwind romance. They had 2 kids together. And they ended up staying together for 10 years. However, Amy was really keen on getting married. And Dave had told her many, many times that he was very stubborn and like he had decided he didn't want to get married ever. And so at some point after those 10 years, they split up in a friendly manner from what I could find. So in 2012, Dave moved to Omaha, Nebraska, which was kind of close to where Amy and his kids live. So Dave, who's now 36 years old, he's very happy that him and Amy have managed to deal with such a horrible situation in kind of the best way possible. But his apartment felt empty and depressing. He was in a city that he didn't really know. He didn't really know anyone there. And he had been in a relationship for 10 years, so he didn't really know how to re-enter the dating scene. So what he did, he joined a dating website. He joined Plenty of Fish. Quite quickly, he begins to re-enter the dating pool. He thought it would be hard, but actually it wasn't really that hard. So yeah, Dave had a pretty good time with quite a few women, and I mean, as you do. He told all the women that he didn't want a relationship, he just got out of a long-term relationship, and he just wanted to shag around. And the women were usually all fine with that, and yeah, so Dave having a good time. And then in late September of that year, Dave is at his work at an auto body shop where they repair cars and stuff, when this beautiful woman walks in, and Dave immediately couldn't take his eyes off of her. He helps her and she says that there was something wrong with her black Ford Explorer and if he'd have a look at it. And Dave immediately felt a sense of attraction and a sort of electricity between the two. And he felt like he wasn't the only one feeling it. He felt like they were kind of both having this sort of moment. Yeah. I love how you're right now thinking back of a time when you had that. So You're welcome for that. Maybe tell me about it in the comments. And now Dave really wanted to ask her out, but obviously he was like, well, I'm at work and it's not really professional to do that, ask a customer out. And now when she left, he couldn't stop thinking about this tension that they both have felt. And also, because he had been meeting women online through apps and dating sites all summer, it felt really nice to kind of meet someone the old-fashioned way and like look someone in the eye and then go, you know? And then he ended up thinking, well, maybe if it really was mutual, maybe she'll come back to the auto body shop and ask me out. And otherwise, you know, it was a fun moment. But what really did stick with him was how nice it was to meet someone face to face again. So he kind of thought for himself, hey, I'm gonna lay low on the plenty of fish thing and, you know, try to go out more or something. But then 2 weeks later, when he was scrolling through plenty of fish again, I guess he didn't really take on his own advice, magic happens. Because there he sees a woman, and it's the woman from the auto body shop. Her name was Cari Farver, and she was a 5'7", so 1 meter and 74 centimeters, tall woman. She was tanned with light brown hair and hazel eyes and a dazzling smile. She was 37 years old, and she was a single mother with a 14-year-old son whom she lived with in Macedonia in Iowa. Her work was actually very close to Dave's apartment, but most importantly, he had found her, and that meant she was single as well. So Dave immediately texted her, hey, I know you. And not that long after, she texted him back with, hey, I know you too. And so over the next 2 weeks, they would text almost every day. You know, we've all been there where you're like texting each other all the time, and when you're not, all you can think about is, do I have a message? Did I just hear my phone? Oh my god. Funnily enough, by the way, and I'm not sure if it's just for me, all the people that I've had this sort of infatuation text thing with going on, thinking back of it now, yeah, literally all of them, it's like, good that we didn't end up together. Have you ever had this sort of crazy infatuation with someone where you felt like you could die because you're so in love? That actually like ended up being a long-term stable relationship? I'm curious, let me know. So anyway, Dave and Cari were texting every day, and then after 2 weeks, Cari came to the auto body shop again because something was wrong with her car. I couldn't find if there was something like actually wrong, but girl, was there something wrong with your car really? But yeah, Cari was at the auto body shop again, and Dave didn't waste a single minute. He immediately asked her out, and so the next evening, they were sitting across from each other at an Applebee's, and they both were like at the same time nervous, but also very excited to finally see this person that they had been thinking about for weeks. Immediately, it was also obvious that they had quite a lot in common. They were both single parents, they really loved their kids, they loved to read, and they both had busy jobs, and neither of them also wanted to take life too seriously. So they're having drinks together, having a great time, and after a few hours, they are going to Dave's apartment together. They get into the apartment and the air between them is electric, and they start making out. But before they even could get any further than first base, is making out first base? I never know. Further than making out, snogging, they hear a hard knock on the door, and they're sitting on the sofa, and Dave is like, I'm not expecting anyone, so who could it be? And Dave walks towards the door, and when he looks through the peephole, he's like, oh fuck, right, I remember now. So he turns to Cari and he explains the situation to her, and she's very understanding. She says, oh right, no worries, I understand. So Dave goes back and he opens the door, and standing in front of the door is a woman called Shanna Liz Goliar, but she went by Liz mainly. And Liz was actually one of the women that Dave had been dating on and off, and they had found each other very attractive, but both knew it wasn't really going anywhere. So she had left a few things at Dave's apartment, and she had sent him a few texts asking if she could come pick it up. But yeah, Dave was only busy in his head with Cari the entire day because, oh my god, I'm going to meet her tonight. So he had kind of been ignoring her text. So Liz, who is standing in the door opening, she sees Dave and she sees Cari, and immediately she realizes what's going on. She's like, oh my god, no, fuck. So yeah, Liz is flushed a bit and she's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I will leave straight away. But Cari was already getting her stuff, and she said to Dave, hey, let me know when you sort this out. Does a little goodbye thingy, and then she leaves. And Liz apologizes again to Dave. She's like, oh my god, so sorry. and she gets her things and ends up leaving as well. So he calls Cari and he says, hey, is it too late for you to, still come by? And Cari says, yeah, I think I will. So Cari goes over to his house and they start getting intimate straight away, kissing, and it's passionate. But then Cari stops him for a second and said, hey, we talked about this, but I don't want a relationship. I'm not going to be your girlfriend. And Dave was like, wow, oh my God, I have hit the jackpot, because I wanted to say that to her. So this is great. So I guess they started banging, and over the next few weeks, they would hang out a lot together, and especially because Cari worked at this computer engineering company thing, and the location of her work was actually way much closer to Dave's apartment, just only a few blocks away, whilst it was an hour-long drive for her back to her own house in Iowa. So she stayed over there a lot to avoid the longer commute, and she helped him furnish his apartment a little bit to, give it some character, put a little love into the apartment, and she picked out a love seat for him, and they were having just, pretty good time picking out furniture and then having sex on it, I suppose. And then on the morning of November 13th, 2012, Dave got up and he had his coffee and he got ready for work, and Cari was sitting in the love seat that she picked out for him, and she was ticking away on that computer doing some work before going to work. And Dave kissed her goodbye and he left for work feeling pretty good. But then during his work at the auto body shop, he receives a text from Cari saying, hey, do you want to move in together? And Dave's like, nah, we talked about this. We weren't going to do this. So Dave thought it was a bit odd, but he had also had it before with a few women where they said they were totally fine with him not wanting a relationship, but then at some point maybe developed feelings and would want more. And then Dave would, cut it off. So he texted her back saying, hey, I'm not interested, but let's talk when I get back from work. And almost instantly after he sent the message, he gets a text message back from Cari saying, fine, I hate you. I'm dating someone else. I don't want to see you anymore. Go away. So Dave's like, what the okay, I guess I dodged a bullet here. Wow. But when he gets home after work, she had moved out. She'd taken all of her stuff. Only after a day or two of silence, and she started to blow up his phone with texts and emails. And at first, they were angry and jealous, saying things like, I will do what I can to make you suffer. And then another said, we belong together, Dave, which then was followed by saying that she hated him and that he was a terrible person. So yeah, but then they started turning creepy as fuck, because one message said, my favorite thing to do is to stand outside and stare at you. And then from creepy to blatantly threatening, because she started sending messages like, I hate you so much that I want to drive a knife into your heart. I will destroy your life and take all your happiness. Yikes. So yeah, not great. Dave is kind of worried, but he also doesn't really know what to do with it. So he kind of just tries to ignore it until hopefully it maybe fades away. But then he gets a phone call from the friend he used to date before a little bit, the woman named Liz Goliar. And she says that, hey, I've been getting threatening, weird kind of texts from, I think, that woman that I saw when I was with you. She's named Cari. All of a sudden, Liz had also become a target, and within 2 weeks of Cari breaking up with Dave, they were receiving dozens of text messages, hang-up calls, and over 50 emails every single day. Girl! And actually by November 23rd, so that is 10 days after Cari broke up with Dave, Liz finds her garage door spray painted with the words whore from Dave. So yeah, Liz is not happy about that. So she called the Omaha police, and police couldn't really do anything with it because Cari had actually run away. But obviously she seemed to be still around, because at some point shit got real creepy. Dave is sitting in his living room with his feet propped up on an ottoman, and he's having a good time watching television, when all of a sudden he gets a text from Cari saying, Dave, I can see you. You're sitting in your chair with your feet propped up. You're wearing a blue shirt. Wee, 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 wee. Now, obviously, Cari had family back in Iowa, and her mother was just very shocked about why this sort of happened. And so after 3 days, she phoned the police and filed a missing persons report. And now when the police followed up on this missing persons report and went to talk to Dave, hoping maybe he could give them some more information, Dave learned something that kind of made him understand a bit better why Cari, who seemed so put together and such a fun and great person, all of a sudden could have snapped and totally changed into this crazy stalking person. Dave learned from the police that Cari suffered from something called bipolar disorder. And very brief explanation, bipolar disorder is a mental health condition where you suffer from very low lows like bouts of depression and also aggressive outbursts of mania where you're super happy and super excited. And sometimes this can cause people to, do crazy things. However, I want to note that that is not necessarily a reason for someone to be a crazy stalker person. So not everyone with bipolar is a crazy stalker person. And because of this reason, I am doing my first mental health excluded episode focused on bipolar disorder. And I have interviews scheduled with some of my pals who have bipolar disorder and are willing to talk about it. So I'm making a video, talking about the misconceptions and what someone with bipolar actually experiences, what it's like for them. And I want to do more videos like that. Like I said last year, we're going to do so many series. Well, we all know my ass is a bit inconsistent and anything can happen with my brain sometimes. However, we have started now to do these episodes, and I can't promise when they will be online. It might be next month, it might be next year. However, we started. So we're doing bipolar, we're doing borderline, PTSD, multiple personality disorder, anything that we can find. So also, if you have a special diagnosis considering your mental health, please let me know if you want to talk about it. Can be anonymous or you can be, in a video. So you can email me at whattheeureka@gmail.com because that was the first name of this channel. I've changed it like 5 times, but we're sticking with Adhdumpsterfire now because I like it. Anyway, circling back, so Dave found out Cari had bipolar disorder, which explained it a bit to him, but still it didn't make it any better that she was still messaging both of them, Liz and Dave, and the messages just kept coming. And even if they changed their phone numbers or got different phones, Cari, with her computer knowledge, would always find a way to track them back down and find their phone numbers and email addresses again. And then in January of 2013, Dave, who obviously had worked with Cari's car in the auto body shop a lot, saw Cari's car parked in a parking lot not that far away from him, and he recognized the license plate, so he immediately called the police and said, "Oh my god, I don't know why, but Cari's car is there." And the police came and picked it up, and they looked at it for evidence, but apart from a mint tin with a single fingerprint on it, they couldn't really find anything in her car, which is odd because, your fingerprints should be all over. So the car was wiped clean apart from that one single fingerprint. So this was suspicious, but they still didn't really know where to continue from there on. Also, Dave and Liz would turn in their phones to law enforcement, but nothing on them would actually lead them to Cari or bring them any closer anyways. So police really didn't know what to do at this point. And also, the texts were really threatening, but spray painting a garage door, usually it's not something that the police, en masse go out on the street for. So yeah, Dave and Liz kind of had to accept that this, as for now at least, was kind of their life. And ironically, this brought Liz and Dave closer together because only they knew from each other what the other one really was going through. And at some point, it wasn't uncommon for them to be hanging out together on Dave's sofa and then getting a barrage of texts from Cari. So at some point, they would start to call her Crazy Cari. And it would be like, "Oh, I got a text from Crazy Cari again." And he'd be like, "Oh, did you see what I got an hour ago?" Which is kind of painful, but yeah, hundreds and thousands of texts had become their normal life now. And then in the summer of 2013, Dave and Liz kind of tried to move on with their respective lives. They had kind of grown apart again, and Liz was planning on moving in with her kids into an ex-boyfriend's house or something, and Dave, he was spending more time with his kids back in Iowa, so they both kind of had moved on. But the text at this point had started to get way worse. worse. Dave received an email from Cari saying that she was going to kill Liz, and she included a picture of a woman who wasn't really recognizable tied up in the trunk of a car. So Dave was like, what the heck? And he immediately called Liz, and she was like, what? No, well, no, I'm fine. I'm not in the trunk of a car. Liz was okay. However, Liz wouldn't be okay for very long, because on August 27th of that year, so 2013, someone set fire to Liz's house and the entire place burned down. Liz and the kids luckily weren't there. However, all the 4 family pets were killed. A cat, 2 dogs and a snake. After the fire happened, Liz went on to check her emails from like the hours and the day before, and she found an email that said, "I hope you and your children burn to death." And this was sent hours before the fire had allegedly started. So Liz and her children were obviously terrified and devastated. And Liz had had a very hard life already. Her parents died when she was 3 years old, and she had grown up in the foster care system. And now that she finally had managed to get out of that and make a life for herself, and, you know, with her 2 kids and being a good mother, this woman who dated a guy that she has dated kind of for a bit, this woman who dated that same guy for only 2 weeks, is ruining her life for no reason at all, burning down her house and putting her children in danger, and also killing her 4 pets and burning down everything she owns. So Liz is not doing great. Dave feels horrible about this, and he started drinking more heavily, and people around him would kind of worry about him a bit. And because of the fire, the police got more into the case once again, because they were like, okay, something is going on. Dave bought a gun because he was scared. And even though the police were now on the case, Cari's assaults were getting much, much worse. The auto body shop where Dave worked was vandalized, and in January 2014, when he was on a date, because, you know, whatever happens, Dave do be dating, and he was on this date with a woman, and his doorknob was shaken, and then a brick was thrown through the window. So, actually really sucks. Can you imagine just, you know, dating a woman and then her going completely mental on you and ruining not only your life, but also the life of another woman you randomly dated for a bit. And then also people around them would start getting texts and weird death threats as well. So Cari never kind of could get enough, and everything had to be bigger and more. So she just could hurt Dave in every possible way that she could. And then on the evening of December 5th, things got a whole lot worse. Liz was sitting on a park bench enjoying the calm and quiet evening when she thought she felt someone tap on her shoulder quite firmly. So she turned around, and it turned out that it was a person in black clothing, and she didn't feel a tap, but it was a gun that was pressed against her back and was now held in her face. And Liz obviously panics, and she tries to run away, and the person tries to shoot her, and one bullet misses her, but the second bullet goes into her leg, and Liz screams and runs away. And luckily she does manage to get away and immediately calls the police, frantically and totally scared. And so the police go have a talk with her, and she explains that it was a woman and that the person ran after they saw that Liz was actually hit. And at this point, Liz wasn't handling the situation as well as she usually had done, because now her house had burned down, her pets had been murdered, she had been shot, and also that she was kind of lucky enough to be shot in the leg, because what would have happened if she hadn't ran, right? And so while she's in the hospital recovering, she talks to police a lot because she gladly wants to give them anything to have this stop. And at some point, the conversation kind of goes to the idea of, what if Cari Farver is actually dead and someone is impersonating her? And they start talking about this, and Liz says, actually, I knew it was a far-fetched, but I kind of had been thinking about that as well, because why would a woman that only dated someone for 2 weeks go for, I think it was like almost 3 years by this time that this had been going on? So why would a woman that had only dated him for 2 weeks go so crazy on him for such a long time, right? So they start talking about, what if it's not Cari? what if it's someone else? And the person they kind of end up coming up on is Amy Flora, Dave's ex-wife. I was going to say husband. Dave's ex-wife, Amy Flora, the mother of his 2 kids. They had been together for 10 years and they split up because Dave didn't want to marry her. So this kind of could be a motive. And now back in Iowa, Cari's mother, Nancy, also didn't believe that this was her daughter because they had been receiving texts and emails as well, but Cari would never call them. They hadn't heard her voice for the last 3 years. And also she just didn't see how the person harassing all these people could be her, Cari. And also what was alarming to them is that the more time that passed after Cari had last been seen that morning with Dave, the more events, like special family events, that Cari started to miss. And she would always know that something was going on or reply by text or Facebook messaging that she would not be able to attend the event. But at some point she had missed her son's 15th birthday, she had missed her own birthday, she had missed a family wedding, and also she had missed the funeral of her own father at some point, apologizing by Facebook message and email. And especially when she missed the funeral, Cari's mother, Nancy, knew that this was not her daughter. And so she messaged her saying, "The only way that I'll know it's you is if you call me. I need to hear your voice." And also Cari's son, he missed his mother like crazy and he didn't believe it was his mother as well. So what he did is he reached out to her on Facebook and he said, "Hi." And Cari immediately replied with, "Hey little man, how are you?" And he replied with, "I have 3 questions. First question, what's my middle name? Second question, what was the name of our first boxer dog? And third question, what is the name of my best friend?" And Cari never replied to those messages. So it is looking like we don't know if she's alive or dead, but this is probably not Cari. Because also these texts and emails, they were almost never grammatically correct. They had lots of spelling errors and no punctuation whatsoever. They were just kind of all over the place. And that wasn't like Cari at all. She was actually kind of a grammar Nazi. So everyone that knew her thought like, this can't be Cari. And that made me go, okay, why did it take everyone, like not her family, but why did it take the police 3 years to get to the point of maybe it's not Cari, when everyone, like, it's so obvious that Cari was very, like, great with words and spelling and not, and that her messages that she is supposedly sending are just a big mess. So I don't know why it took them that long. But anyway, so the police start looking into this and 2 officers were assigned to the case. And what they did is they made a plan of one of them proving that Cari is still alive, and the other one would work on proving that Cari was dead. So they started working on this, and more they realized that even though the person that was working on Cari's dead couldn't really find anything to prove that. However, the officer that worked on Cari's alive definitely had nothing to work with, and everything he found out or everyone that he questioned made him realize even more that, like, I have no case here at all. We don't know if she's dead or where, but it's definitely looking like she's not alive. So all of this resulted in the police officers focusing in on Amy Flora, Dave's ex-wife. And they brought her into the police station, they questioned her, and she claimed she was innocent, but she also fails the lie detector test. And lie detector tests aren't always the most reliable thing. I mean, they can be quite accurate apparently, but I feel like if I was hooked up to one of these things, I would just be, the thing would be going off because I would just be nervous, and they'd be like, "What's your name?" And I'd say, "Eureka," and then it's like, "You're lying!" You're like, "I'm sorry." So they had to let her go. Police, they went to Liz and they asked her if she would be willing to help them try and catch Amy Flora. And how they wanted Liz to do this is to start messaging Amy back, because all over the years no one has really replied. So they asked Liz if she would be willing to try and reply back and provoke Amy maybe into like blurting out a confession. And Liz is hesitant because she's like, "Well, my house is burned down, not not great, I've been shot, but also she really, really wants to be done with this. And after the police really assure her that she has protection and like she'd be safe, Liz finally agrees. And so Liz starts texting, allegedly, Amy Flora or Cari Farver back. And only after a few messages back and forth, she manages to get Amy so agitated and riled up. Amy starts confessing into detail, I might add, about what she has done to Cari Farver. And Liz was like, whoa, okay, texting it straight through to the police so they could hopefully do something with it. Now, from the emails, because sorry I said text, but they were emails, the police could conclude, or wasn't that hard because Amy was just straight up telling them, that Cari Farver had died in the back of her car, her own black Ford Explorer.
I really did kill Cari, and I did do it in her own car.
And the police were like, wait, we have that car. So they go back and do another way more thorough examination of the car. They rip off the seat covers, and underneath those covers they find bloodstain, and those bloodstains belong to Cari. And also they would find a match on the fingerprint that was on the little tin in the car. So I'm not quite sure why they didn't remove the seat covers the first time. The police felt confident enough that now, after 3 years, they had found out who was responsible for this 3-year stalkathon from hell. And that person indeed was not Cari Farver. It was, however, also not Amy Flora. The person who had done all of this for 3 years was Liz Goliar. Yep. Liz had killed Cari Farver and had gone on to impersonate her for years, manipulating people around her into feeling bad for her, and especially so that she could make sure that her dreamboat Dave would never leave her side. Fuck. Liz Goliar was arrested on December 22nd, 2016 for first-degree murder and also second-degree arson because, lest us not forget, that she set fire to her own fucking house. Now, when investigators downloaded the contents of Liz's computer and devices of Dave that Liz had access to, her IP address could be traced down to all the messages that she had pretended to send as Cari, all the awful emails and text messages that they had been getting for 3 years, and this was over 60,000 of them. All of the IP addresses could be traced back to Liz. Most incriminating of all of what they found on Liz's computer were photos of a decomposing foot, and this was identifiable as Cari's foot because of a distinctive tattoo that she had on her ankle. So yeah, when you have that on your computer. And also they were able to match Liz's fingerprint to the single fingerprint that they had found on the mint tin in Cari's car, which like made me go, okay, but why did no one check Liz's fingerprint then when they first searched the car book? Now, it turned out that Liz's obsession with Dave started almost immediately after their first date back in 2012. And by the time that Liz had showed up to Dave's house, she clearly saw that her time with Dave was slipping away and that this woman, Cari, was, swooping in to take her possession from her. And she was not going to let that happen.
We found Cari's digital camera and camcorder. That means at some point, Liz went into Cari's house and stole those items from her house and has kept them for years after.
On Cari's camera, investigators find video taken just 2 days before Cari was killed. She had just discovered that her Ford Explorer had been vandalized.
So Thursday night, apparently somebody here in the whopping metropolis of Macedonia, Iowa, decided Max's Explorer was not the right color. We're gonna go see if we can fix that. Somebody thought they were quite the artist. There's some all over the hood.
And so the text that Dave received that day saying, do you want to move in together? And every single text and email since that moment had been the work of Liz Goliar, and the police managed to estimate how much time Liz would have had to spend on, getting this out in the world, all these texts and emails and messages. Listen, 40 to 50 hours every single week working on impersonating Cari Farver and also using her Facebook account to create the illusion that Cari was still alive. And now the ongoing drama would make Dave feel just sort of chronically guilty all the time, and bad for Liz for him being the reason that she was in this situation. And so, starting mildly by spray painting her own garage door and vandalizing the auto body shop, she progressed to stalking Dave, like texting him, "I see what you're wearing right now and you're sitting in your chair, la la la." And then when he was on a date, shaking his doorknob, throwing a brick through the window, to then setting fire to her own house, killing her and her kids' 3 poor pets, and then shooting herself in the fucking leg. And actually, when I said that Liz and Dave had kind of, went their separate ways again, Liv was going to move in with her ex-boyfriend and Dave was spending more time with Amy and his kids, that was the moment that Liz went like, no, I need to get you back. That was the moment when she started setting fire to her own house. She just got so entangled in her own web of lies that actually there was a moment that she shot herself and that the police talked to her and that they started talking about what if Carrie's dead, maybe it's Amy Flora. When she said this to the police, and actually she also immediately filed a restraining order against Amy Flora. At that point, the police already really suspected Liz because she seemed way too involved in everything. And so when they asked her to help them out to try and message Amy back and, try to catch her, that was actually their way of getting Liz to incriminate herself. Well done. So yeah, the police couldn't believe how easy it was from the moment they decided they were going to do that. And Liz was just like, okay, here you go. I've murdered her in the car, blah, blah, blah.
Now, the reason why you're in this chair right now today is because you have a lot of questions that you need to answer for me. Her phone was at your house right after she disappeared. And I want to ask you how you can explain that to me, please.
She's never been to my house.
Your fingerprints are inside her vehicle. How would your fingerprints be inside her vehicle?
I don't know, because I've never been in her car.
You drove her car.
No, I didn't. I've never been inside her car. I've never even been around her car. Ever.
Your fingerprints are in there.
No, I haven't. I'm not lying. I've never been around her car. I've never even seen it.
For years and years, people have been sending emails under Cari's fictitious accounts. The IP addresses show up to whose house? Your house.
I haven't had internet at my house.
Are you going to sit in this chair and be remorseful? Or are you going to sit in this chair and be cold-blooded? Because right now, after 4 years, this family's been looking for answers. Why would you create all these emails?
I haven't created any emails.
All these have been coming from your
they're not.
House.
And I'm not going to be accused of something that I didn't do.
The finger's pointing right at you.
Then I'm done talking and I'm going to have my attorney because I didn't do anything.
Okay.
So after all the investigations were done, this is what probably happened to Cari Farver. On that particular morning, when Dave kissed her goodbye and left for work, a few moments later, Cari had also left for work. And when she got out to the parking lot and got into a car, Liz's car was parked next to her, and she got into the driver's seat, and at just the right moment, Liz Goliar, sorry for the noise, opened the door, jumped into the seat next to Cari and said, "We're going for a drive." After telling Cari to drive, Liz takes Cari's phone and she texts Dave the message that says, "Do you want to move in together?" And also she texts Cari's mum to say that Cari is taking a job in Kansas and moving to Kansas. But also if she could please pick her kids up from school. So thanks, Mum. Then her confession goes into, the next day I drove Cari into the woods in the back of the trunk and she was still alive. And when we were in the woods, she was begging to at least call her family, call her son one more time to say goodbye to them. And Liz was just like, nah.
She tried to attack me, but I attacked her with a knife. I stabbed her 3 or 4 times in the chest and stomach area, and then took her out and burned her. I stuffed her body in a garbage can with crap.
Let's talk a bit about the history of Liz Goliar, because she actually used to have a son, a little baby called Cody, and when he was 15 months old, he died from shaken baby syndrome. And at the time, her, I think, ex-husband, who was mentally disabled, was jailed for it, even though Liz was the one that called him to tell him that she had dropped the baby or like bumped his head. So, and actually the baby seemed fine until a few hours before he died. And lastly, people around Liz would later say that they were really weirded out by that she didn't act like a grieving mother at all after her son died. In fact, she went on a shopping spree and had a hot one-night stand the day before Cody's funeral. So now I do want to say that obviously everyone grieves in different ways, so we can't really judge one another when we're not standing in the other person's shoes, I think. But it's just a fact that people noticed something was just really odd about her. And looking back at it now that we know it was Liz, and how we know she showed signs of, weirdness around her before, and also the text messages that didn't sound like Cari at all, I can't help but wonder, how did Dave not notice? I mean, the red flags. But then again, we never judge another person's actions when you're not in the other person's shoes and stuff. And also, she used this app that when her texts would arrive, so that they could arrive when she and Dave were hanging out together. So I guess then maybe that would make Dave go, maybe it's not Liz. So yeah, that's the story of Cari Farver, Dave Kroupa, and Liz Goliar. As for Dave, he is still co-parenting his kids together with Amy, Flora, and he continues to spread awareness by talking about Cari's case wherever he can.
I'm paranoid as hell. I really am. I don't trust anybody. I really don't.
And also Cari's mother, Nancy, doesn't hold any anger towards Dave whatsoever, because she feels like he was a victim in this case as well. And Nancy and her husband are in fact really good friends still with the police officers who solved this case. They consider them to be kind of their family. So I thought that was kind of at least something nice to come out of this. And as for Liz, well, Liz is serving out her life sentence in the Nebraska Correctional Facility for Women. In 2017, Liz's lawyer actually received a text from a random phone number threatening her kids' lives. And it would turn out that this was sent from a random contraband phone that was smuggled inside the prison. And they were not able to prove it, but everyone kind of thinks it was Liz, because Liz is talked about in her prison. At some point, a detective went to visit another inmate of that prison, and this inmate told her that she had this crazy other cellmate called Liz Goliar, but that this crazy cellmate would actually make all the other inmates call her Cari. Like, well, that's like next level fucked up. Liz did file for an appeal, but her conviction was overturned in 2018. And her kids live with her family, and they are doing well, luckily. And as for Cari's family, her son Max has followed in her footsteps. He is now married, and he goes to school for data science, and he also continues to work as a software engineer. So that's pretty cool, I guess, that he went after his mum and did that. So yeah, to close this story off today, I want to say that first of all, my thoughts go out to Cari's family and all the loved ones and the lives she touched. So let's make sure her story is known, but let's also make sure that we learn from it and that we are cautious with whomever we date. Or like, for instance, let's learn something here then. What I've learned from listening to cases where someone also gets abducted and murdered is how important it is, if this makes sense, to make sure you don't leave the first place. So let's say you get attacked at place A where you are, and then they abduct you and take you to place B, and statistics show that if you are taken to place B, there's a really high percentage chance of you not surviving. So they always tell people, and so now I'm telling you, even maybe there's not even a possibility to escape, but if you get attacked and someone wants to take you away, give it your all. Bite, scratch, scream, or whatever. Do everything you can to make sure that you don't get taken away to place B, because that's where people die, apparently. So yeah, that's really fucking depressing, isn't it? At least Liz Goliar is locked up and she can't stalk anymore apart from annoying her inmates. 2 birds, 1 stone, I guess. So yeah, that's it for today then. Thank you so much for watching until the end with me. And if you had as much fun as I did, because I did, I had fun with you. You would make my day if you would boop the subscribe button, because it helps me out a lot. And also, if you would then also not forget the like button, because otherwise she feels left out. Shat. So yeah, I'll be here soon again with a new true crime case. Before I leave though, can we talk about my sticky tattoos, my fake tattoos that I got at the supermarket for free, because I'm very excited about them. Look, wait, I'm not going to show you my boobs, I'm sorry. Ooh, 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 very nice, very nice. And then we also have this one. Laptop. That's what we put the tripod on. Ring light that I bought for 10 euros. Broken mirror that I still need and it kind of works, so that I can see what I'm doing. Alright, I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you so much for watching. Please be kind to yourself. Please be kind to people around you. Tell the ones you love that you love them. And move to a quieter street. Alright, see you. Bye. Oh, that might be too intense to actually post. Sorry if I did.